Good evening, students. As I explained to you yesterday, the first chapter of the unit, the print culture and the modern world, in which I have told you about the evolution of print culture, that how print culture has evolved, and the print culture was first introduced in China, then Japan, then Korea, and after that print comes to Europe. So student, this is our second chapter of this unit, print comes to Europe. First of all, Europe is one of the continent among 7 continents in the world. It comes to the second last number according to its size and area. Now let's start. For centuries, silk and spices from China flowed into Europe through the Silk Route. In the 11th century, Chinese paper reached Europe via the same route. Paper made possible the production of manuscripts carefully written by scribes. Then in 1295, Marco Polo, a great explorer, returned to Italy after many years of exploration in China. So students, the Silk Route was a series of ancient trade networks that connected China and Far East with countries in Europe and the Middle East. For centuries, silk and spices from China flowed into Europe through the Silk Route. Chinese paper also reached Europe through the Silk Route also, and the paper made possible the production of those books or documents that were written by hand called manuscripts. Manuscripts are those documents or books which were written by hands, and by those persons who writes books or documents by hand as a profession called scribes. Then in 1295, Marco Polo was an Italian merchant, great explorer and writer who traveled through Asia along the Silk Route, returned to Italy after so many years of exploration in China. As all of you know that wood block printing was first introduced in China, so Marco Polo brought this knowledge back with him. Now Italians began producing books with wood blocks, and soon the technology spread to other parts of Europe. Luxury editions were still handwritten on very expensive vellum meant for aristocratic circles and rich monastic libraries, which scoffed at printed books as cheap vulgarities. Merchants and students in the university towns bought the cheaper printed copies. Luxury editions means students, those which were very expensive, those writings which was enjoyable and expensive were still handwritten on very expensive vellum. Very expensive vellum. Vellum means a parchment made from the skin of animals. It is a kind of letter or paper which is made up from the skin of animals. So vellum was made for aristocratic circles, means a member of the highest social class, often with a special title, and rich monastic libraries connected with monasteries or monks showed that these printed books as ridiculous and as a cheap vulgarities. Merchants and students in the university towns bought these cheaper printed copies. So students, in this paragraph we have read that after China and Japan, this manuscript technology, means wood block printing technology, was also introduced in Europe, and the other parts of Europe it was spreading very soon. Students, here on Marco Polo there is 1 marks question which is very important, so you have to learn from then to China, and also Marco Polo brought this technology back with him. So this is an important question for your board examination for 1 marks. You have to read very carefully and attentively all these paragraphs, each and every line, because they contain 1 marks questions.